Them officers.
Okay.
If he's a major, he ain't used to work.
Hey everybody, this is Tony and Sam at SunDance Marine. We're going live here.
Live.
Welcome back to our second Tuesday of the month fishing seminar. Tonight we're going to talk about inshore fishing, specifically the species for this time of year. And
No pompano though.
we can talk about it. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great. Great.
All right. So we went out fishing last week and didn't do too well, but we caught a few fish. We got a video playing behind us of some fish that we got, and we're going to talk about that too. And just so everybody knows, we're at SunDance Marine, Jensen Beach, and come on in and see us. We've got some new boats in stock. We've got sales, service, and fuel and storage. So come by and say hello when you're in the area. We're right downtown Jensen Beach. With that being said, Sam,
Yes, sir.
let's talk about this time of year in general.
Well, this time of year there's a lot going on. You've got the Spanish are here. The snook, I think, Jerry, they went out today, didn't they? Snook season went out today. 15th?
Midnight
tonight. And we got, we don't have a lot of trout left, but, this was always a great month for trout. Got a few redfish up the river. King mackerel. Of course, it was been pretty rough out there today looking for king mackerel. So it's pretty windy, but there's a lot going on. There's always something going on. We're very fortunate. I was talking to this lady down the street. She just moved here from San Diego, and she says, I just go to the beach every day because the water is so nice and warm here. And the Pacific Ocean is so cold. About the only thing those folks catch right now is tuna. So we're very fortunate. It takes a little bit of time to get local knowledge of how to where to go and how to fish. There's several techniques to fishing. One of the techniques that I use a lot is especially if you're on the beach is I'll troll a plug. Me and Jerry went this week and we trolled some plugs, but the fish were down on top of the ledge, and you couldn't get them to hit a plug. We had to catch them on spoons and had to catch them on jigs and that kind of stuff.
Mackerel we're talking about?
Mackerel we're talking about now.
Spanish mackerel.
And Spanish mackerel. And, but the pompano, they've kind of vanished again. Hopefully as soon as the weather turns a little bit cooler. And one thing is on the incoming tide now, the water is so doggone clear. You get clear water all the way up to, the bridge, all the way up to the Benihana Bridge, and it makes it tough to catch those pompano because they really like a little bit of murky water. They like a little bit of murky water because of their prey, which are crabs and shrimp and that kind of stuff. You can't see them as well. Of course, the snook, anytime you get moving water, the snook are going to be, that's where you're going to find the snook. They love to chase bait, and Jerry got a good snook the day before yesterday, and he was chasing bait. We saw him, we kind of cheated on him, didn't we, Jerry? I saw him running bait up against the seawall and then up against the bank. We kind of skipped the bait up under there, throwed it right on top of his head. Next thing I know, Jerry's doubled up with him, so but the local knowledge, local technique, here again, I say that if you want to learn some of the local techniques in the local places, hire a guide. Hire a guide one day. Give yourself a treat. Get you a buddy and hire a guide, go out for a half-day fishing, and pay attention, ask questions. That's the easiest way to learn, not so much the places to fish, his place, but learn different places, and then you compare those to different situations on the water. So it makes it a lot easier. And if a guide says, "Well, I don't want you coming back to any of my places," well, I got news for you. You need to hire another guide because that's part of his job is to show you where to fish and how to fish. And if you get somebody like that, then get somebody else.
Well, also where not to fish, right?
Because where not to fish.
You don't
that's
want
right.
to take a boat and run up. Unfortunately, we don't have as much seagrass, but it's important not to run up on those shallow spots where there is seagrass and tear up the grass. So, it's good to learn areas and how to get in and out of them without tearing everything up.
One of the things that really help that is your navigational charts and these new electronics, the Garmin, the Hummingbird, all those maps in there tell you where the shallow spots are and the deep spots are and the dangerous places are. And if you'll pay attention to it, because they've all got this built-in map. Every one of them's got a built-in map. But you can buy a chip and put in that unit. I think a chip's about $140, something like that, $150. And it's just like having a road map in front of you. And let me tell you, you run aground and knock that lower unit off, it's going to cost you a whole lot more than $150. I can assure you of that. But that's another good point, is where to go and where not to go. And I see people that don't really pay attention to the markers out there. If you don't pay attention to those markers, you're going to spend some money on a boat because you're going to tear something up. Here in the Indian River, we have so many shallow water areas. It could be 10 feet right here, and right over here it could be 3 feet. And, it's not, you just got to pay attention to where you are and what you're doing. Nothing wrong with getting a navigational book, and read what certain markers mean. If they're channel markers, how many of you know what a yellow square or a yellow triangle is on a marker, a river marker? That means that's part of the intercoastal waterway. So, and stuff like that. It means, where a creek intersects with a river. There's markers for that. And, so read up on that stuff, and it just makes your trip a lot more enjoyable. Nobody wants to go out and tear their boat up.
No.
It's a problem.
Supposed to go out and have fun.
Yeah, supposed to go out and have fun. But Tony, he's got a little trick. He's fishing was slow, and he started tipping everything with a shrimp. He was catching everything. He was catching hardtails, Spanish,
We went out.
sharks.
We went to Sam's couple of spots just right near the channel edges, markers, and we set the anchor, and we didn't have a trolling motor, but we actually put the anchor down, and the current was pretty strong at that point. I think one of the things that we found out, thanks to Ed Killer, told us that he was out there fishing the day we were this day here last week, and they got some pompano in the afternoon after the outgoing when the tide switched around. Like Sam says, the water was beautiful, super clean, and then after it turned and started going out, there was some bites in the afternoon. They got some pompano right out here in the river. But yeah, I learned we have some people in the audience that Facebook can't see, but my boys, always shrimp is the go-to, right? Everybody knows that everything eats shrimp, and that's one thing I found is that mackerel really like shrimp. And you don't have to use, you can use pieces with a jig head and drop it down. You don't have to jig it hard. You can just get it down to where the fish are, if they're at the bottom like they were last week. Mm-hmm. And just slowly lift it up and lower it back down, and they'll eat it. You got to be careful because I don't use wire. So I don't, so if you got to make sure that when they're hitting, because if you're not and they get it all the way in their mouth, you're most likely going to get cut, right? But it works, and Sam was using. You caught the biggest one on the DOA.
Mm-hmm. On the DOA, this is my go-to. This is my go-to lure. I can't tell. Am I in there?
Yeah.
This is a go-to lure, and this color root beer, they all kind of colors. And what I try to do is if I'm fishing for Spanish, I want to fish something that's pretty flashy. Yeah, I like for that light to reflect off that thing, and because Spanish like it. And if you're Spanish mackerel fishing, make a cast, and the faster you can retrieve that thing back to the boat, the more fish you're going to catch. They like it fast, because if you don't fish it fast, you're not going to catch very many. Now, Pompano is completely different.
Yeah. When you're using you can use an artificial shrimp or
yeah,
live shrimp with a jig.
Or a jig head. I think you were throwing this jig head with a piece of shrimp on there.
Yeah.
But one thing about Pompano, when I'm fishing Pompano, what I like to do is when I throw my bait out there with a piece of shrimp on it, and I like to use the head of the shrimp. I'll cut that shrimp in half and just use the head. And I pop it along the bottom. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to simulate a crab or a shrimp puffing out of that sand. That's what I want to simulate, because that's what they're feeding on. They don't chase a lot of bait. And so if you could make it look more erratic and more like a shrimp or a crab, I think you're gonna catch more fish with a pompano. And people say, well, how do you find them? Well, one of the things that I like to do is I do a lot of riding till I find them. Not real fast. I like about, I don't know, 2,000 RPMs maybe not even that. And just cruise the flats, cruise the shallow water. Because you don't want to be you don't want to be running fast. But what they'll do, they'll skip those pompanos. And the more you see skipping, obviously that's where the majority of them are. So I like to skip them. I do a lot of riding when I'm pompano fishing. I like that. I like to look for them. And you can see them. They'll land on their side. They look like little aluminum plates out there.
I was out once fishing up north by the power plant, up by if anybody goes up that way north of the power lines, there's some spoil islands up there on the east side of the main channel. And I was up there with my son and his friend, and we were fishing, and it was interesting because we were fishing around with shrimp and around those islands, and we were just fishing for anything, and it was amazing because it was later it was late spring, and we came up on we drifted across the top of one of the spoil islands. It was probably shallowest about 2 feet,
Mm-hmm.
and we were using corks with the shrimp, and I was reeling in to recast, and I noticed coming up on the bar on the top of the spoil island, the bar was these fish coming behind the shrimp. And I couldn't tell, and I dropped. What I did was I stopped reeling, and that shrimp sunk down, and then they went after it. And it's interesting because that's when I realized they were pompano, and they were basically up on the top of that bar. And it was interesting because it was a fairly clear water day, and I could see the meat, and they were eating on the way down. So what Sam talks about, using that jig head and popping it off the sand, they're most likely going to bite it as it's dropping back down to the sand. And that was really, for me, it was one of those aha moments where I could see the fish actually feed and the behavior of the fish. I didn't realize they hung out on some of these spoil islands, but they were good size too. That was interesting. So we caught a couple, and we did well that day. But, you never know what's going to happen. The behavior of fish sometimes will surprise you. You just got to spend the time on the water, like Sam does a lot.
Well, any time I spend on the water, they say the good Lord's not going to charge it to you. So I'm already 73. I'm trying to save as much of my time as I can. But one of the things, like Tony's talking about, is when the water gets clear, like down toward the inlet, you can actually see those pompano because they're real silver, and they'll turn up sideways and the light will reflect off of them. But I want to tell you, the easier you can see a fish, the harder he is to catch. So I'd rather fish for them in a little bit murky water. One of the things that we've been looking for out here on the flats is the sharks. The sharks, they really feed on the pompano. So if you can find a shark, you can, there's a good chance there's going to be some pompano around there. And it just, you got to find the pompano. This used to be the Mecca for pompano. Mecca. Back in the 90s, it was so good. I mean, it wasn't anything to go out there and catch fish to eat. I mean, nobody froze any fish because we could go catch a limit of trout, pompano, redfish. We could do that. I've seen commercial guys that catch 175 a day. And that might be one reason we don't have so many fish anymore. But they'd catch 175 a day. So you can imagine how many pompano there was. And, it's not like that anymore. You got to find them. You got to look for them. And one of the things that Tony and I were talking about is early this time of the year, I like to use shrimp, but I also like to use clams also. And if you're going to anchor your boat and fish with clams, that's a pretty good technique. You can go on YouTube and see how to rig for pompano, and I use a lot of the commercial rigs there with the little floats on them. That floats that bait up off the bottom so that they can smell it and see it a little bit better.
Those guys on the beach do that.
Yeah.
They'll use a sand flea on the bottom hook and a clam strip on the top hook. Or, they'll wait and see what bait's getting the fish, and they've been getting them on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about any size to them, but I know they've been catching them.
Well, usually there wasn't a size limit on pompano, but there is now. What does it have to be?
11 inches.
11 inches to the fork.
Yeah.
So you got to be real careful about that. Not just because it's breaking the law, but we need to save as many of these fish as we can because they're getting pretty sparse because we don't have any grass. One thing about not having any grass is the fry, the spawn, doesn't have any place to hide.
Nor does the bait.
Yeah,
The shrimp.
The shrimp don't have any place to hide. The immature fish don't have any place to hide. So it's changing our fishery. Ed the other day, Ed Zayak, my good friend, he caught about a 5-pound bonefish out there. Wow. It was a heck of a nice bonefish. I mean,
Big
it was a great bonefish. And he's caught several out there on the flats. He's got a tower in his boat. He can see them a little bit better. But I do not recommend you standing on top of a cooler going down the river. Now, I've seen some guys doing that. That's pretty risky business, especially at our ages. I've had a couple of boat wrecks, and you remember them for a couple of days pretty strong.
So what's your typical tackle if you're
well, this is one of my rods.
If you're going to jig, because there's a couple of types of jigs, right? There's the goofy jigs and
there's the Doc's goofy jig. There's the terrorize. There's this, and
the feather. I use that brown redfish jig.
I didn't bring one of those.
I lost mine, but I was going to bring it.
Yeah, I didn't bring one of those, but and I like to cut the hair off right behind the hook, where it eliminates some of those short
You can get those pink and white ones that are already cut like that.
Yeah.
Those short ones.
And I get everything at the Snook Nook. Snook Nook has a good variety, and most of those boys in there know a little bit about fishing. Most of them are fishermen. I reckon that Henry's raised every guide on this river for the last 30 years. I was lucky I didn't have to go to work for him, but there's been a lot of guides come through there, and it's a good place to get information. It's a good place to find tackle, and he doesn't try to roll anybody's britches legs up or anything like that. He's fair price. They got a lot of good stuff. One of the things that this time of year that I wanted to bring up is, Mark Nichols and I, about 3 years ago, we just we discovered the Atlantic grunt, or, and it, a lot of people don't like to fish for them. The black drum, the croakers, and that's what an Atlantic grunt is, the croaker. But those fish eat mighty well, mighty well. If you're looking for some kind of fish to serve on to eat, those are great possibilities. And you can catch all the fish that you want to on simple stuff just like this right here. So here again, the grunt, they really like structure because they hide in that down current and feed on that stuff that the current brings by them. Now, one fish that's changing every day is the flounder. Don't get messed up with those flounder because we now have a limit and a size limit. So you got to be real careful about them flounder right now. And I think it's even closed right now, isn't it? Well, look it up on the fish app and see if it's closed. He's looking. The popo. That's what I call him. He's a retired police officer.
Actually, it's open. Five limit, 14 minimum,
14-inch, right?
and it's closed from October 15th to November 30th.
Yeah. So that must be the spawning time. But he was a New York City policeman for 25 years. How long?
Pembroke Pines.
Pembroke Pines?
Yeah.
Where's that?
Miami. Fort Worth.
Oh, in Miami. I thought you were,
yeah.
for some reason I thought you were in New York for a while. No? But anyway, he was a popo for a long time. I love that name, popo. I hate the word cop. I don't know where that came from, but it just sounds disrespectful to me. What's that say? Cop?
Oh, that's a
Pig? No. No. No.
Anybody, any questions out there? We got a full house tonight. Any questions about Pompano or one of the species we didn't mention was bluefish, which they come through this time of year as well.
How do you fish the Pompano in the inlet?
In the inlet, fishing with jigs and tipped with shrimp.
On the bottom?
Yeah, I try to stay on the bottom, but I try to stay on the edge of the flat. A lot of times those pompanos will run up and down that edge, okay? So I try to stay real close to the edge if I can. And I use those jigs. One thing you got to be careful of is you want a jig that's like a 3/8 and not so much a 1/8 because you want it to make a little bit of commotion on that sand. That way it'll attract those fish a little bit better.
And you don't want to anchor because then your jig will come up.
Well,
If you drift with the jig.
me and Tony, we had he nearly beat me up out there the day we went fishing. We didn't have any way to control the boat. And we had to go back and get an anchor and stuff.
We had the current moving pretty hard, so we anchored. And it, you follow, Sam was fishing on the starboard side, and he'd throw it and then let it drift down and just kind of pop it as it's running with that current. So you got to keep casting,
But to the popo's question, I do catch more fish drifting. Okay? But let me say this. If I'm fishing right here, in this area right here, and I drift down to here, I don't know if everybody can see that or not. But don't fire up and run right back through them fish. I mean, you got to go around them and then come back down, and then everybody can catch some fish. But if you fire up and run right through the middle of them, it's going to be hard to get them to bite again. I never will get over them people, doing that. So, you try to be a little bit of stealthy, about it. And then if you do get on them real good, you can anchor up tide and then chum them. And chumming works good. I don't care who says it doesn't. Chumming works good, and you don't have to throw whole shrimp. Or you could use, just a little bitty pieces.
Chum with the shrimp?
Sir,
Chum with the shrimp?
chum with a shrimp. Cut them up in little bitty. I used to fish with a guy. He was a famous captain named Bill Curtis, and he was in Biscayne Bay, and he was one of the weirdest guy. He had one eye, and he was one of the weirdest guys in my life. He was a Pan Am pilot. Now, I'm hoping that he lost his eye after he retired, but we never did talk about that. But what he would do, he would get up on the uptide side of those flats in Biscayne Bay, and he had what they call a salad shooter. Y'all know what a salad shooter is? It's a thing they used to sell on TV back in the 70s. And he would grind those shrimp up in that salad shooter and then throw them out of that salad shooter. And he's made a good fisherman out of a lot of people like Kurt Dowdy, Flip Pallett, and all those people, Roland Martin, by chumming with those shrimp on those flats for the bonefish. The same thing will work for the pompano, Any questions yet? More questions y'all ask, the less I have to talk, and the more you're going to like it.
What about the color of hooks? Silver, gold, black, what color?
Like I say, I like a bright colored lure, something with some glitter in it, like that. You talk about the color of the hook itself.
Metal and wire.
The hook itself.
Yeah, maybe like the jig head, because you got the bright fluorescent green and pink and.
A lot of guys use the colors come in the jig colors, like in the goofy jigs. If you like to use those with the little feather, a lot of guys do well with those. I think pink and white are probably the best colors. Honestly, I like darker colors. I just do because even in clear water, I think the darker color it works for me.
He's got a root beer terrorize tied on his rod right there.
I just do. I've always used darker colors, and I fish mostly in the river, so the water's typically darker. But I find that dark does work.
But you're talking about the colors of the hook? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The only preference I have is offshore, and I like a bleeding bait hook, a red hook. I like a red hook. Owner makes a red hook, and that's one of my go-tos when I'm out there offshore.
So if we go down to the beach, like I got a thing about going down on the beach, would be the best thing? Get the pompano rigs, bait them up, and just let them rig.
Yeah.
And the reason you use those longer rods, is to keep the line higher out of the water.
Oh, yeah,
But you don't have to have
them. By there hitting their heads, you get the beaches are like that's getting.
The pompano, you gotta have enough weight to hold that rod with a little bend in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, the pompano pick it up, they run inshore towards you. You'll never know you have a fish on it.
Exactly.
Because they don't run off.
Oh, yeah.
They make a weight that's got spikes on it.
Yeah, I got some of
Sputnik,
those.
yeah.
I got
Sputnik.
Yeah.
Sputnik, is that what they call them?
the big diamond. Just the diamond ones work good too. It's not too bad.
Sure, the reason they're diamond like that is because they're flat on one side and don't roll in the current.
Right.
I was fishing on the Arkansas River, the Red River, and we were catfish fishing, and they had big old flat weights. I finally asked the guy, I said, why in the hell are we using those big flat weights like that? He said, to keep them from rolling around on the bottom.
Okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
can see that too.
Yeah.
Don't roll, but
Yeah.
flat.
So pompanos, I think what all this stuff we've talked about, with pompanos is kind of a special fish, and I think that's kind of why we wanted to talk about it, because you can get them on the beach, you can fish them with, a 9 or 10 or 11-foot rod with a rig, with a multi-hooked rig, and, fresh cut bait, clams or sand fleas or tip shrimp. You can fish them in the river. You can use jigs for them. You can use artificial DOAs. You can use the DOA shrimp, tip jig heads. There's lots of different ways you can catch pompano. I think that's one of the things that makes them a special fish to target. because you can do different things. It doesn't matter if you're a guy who says I don't use bait ever. You can target the pompano with artificial. If you only like to use bait with you got kids, you got a little more option because not just the pompano will eat that piece of bait. So it's a good fish to target. You never
Yeah,
know
they're
what you're going to get.
$23 a pound at the fish store.
And they're good eating. That's for sure. They're good.
Yes,
to
sir.
Do you use fish bites at all?
Yes, sir, I do. Yeah.
Eat. Fish
If
bites.
Fish bites, put it on your hook. It's what it is.
Yeah,
And
I just don't
but
really
I use them. If I like to tip it with a shrimp, but if I get on them good and they're biting, I'll go to fish bites because it's just a lot faster.
Stays on there.
Yeah, it stays on there. It doesn't come off. Yeah, I like fish bites. I sure do. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Spanish out there. That's a great resource out there. They're good eating. You just got to be careful about the boat traffic. If you, a lot of those guys think those fish belong to them. They don't. They belong to everyone. And, I don't see anybody in this room that I think it would scare them, that would get too scared if somebody said something to them. But anyway, the only thing that they really get agitated about is, say like if you got a current running south to north or north to south, whichever way your current's running, don't anchor right in the middle of everybody. Just drift down through there, catch your fish, watch where you're going, and then pull back up there. Like I say, pull out and around and drift back down through there. And that way nobody gets their feelings hurt. You know what I'm saying? But it's a great resource. And you can go to that resource and, on a good day on a 17-foot boat if you want to. Because you can come back in, don't be crazy and stay out there in the storm. I'm scared of the ocean. I'm gonna take. Yes, sir.
How far out you talk about, I got an 18-foot boat and I've gone up before.
So when you go out the inlet, it's Peck Lake they call it. It's on the on the beach side.
Okay.
We were right on the beach almost. They were the fish were
I
literally
was watching the sonar, you're like 16, 18 feet of water.
literally
Yeah.
100 yards off the beach.
Halfway to Hope Sound Beach. You know where Hope Sound Beach is? If you
No.
come out of the inlet and go south,
Okay.
you'll see it. There's a big public beach down there.
The only time I've
between-
gone out the inlet, I've been to the Boils and that was it.
Oh, you went north.
Yeah, well, I went out of Fort Pearson, came
It's
back south.
a hell of a lot closer than the Boils.
Okay.
The Boils are 17 miles.
For some reason the mackerel are
They're
here.
staying south.
It's because of the ledge. because of the reef.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the
2 miles
inside the
south of
reef, if
St.
you have it
Bernard.
Okay.
on the chart, you can see the reef there, and they tend to be on the inside between the reef and the beach.
Okay.
And on the calmest day, that water gets rollers over that reef and it'll flip a boat over.
Yeah,
When
you
it's
gotta be
calm,
careful.
Well-
when the ocean's calm,
The inlet.
it's
Well, if you get a swell running,
You're
yeah,
talking
it's
about
possible.
the reef.
by Peck's Lake.
Yeah, it's actually north of Peck's Lake.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's actually north of Peck's Lake. But there's some shallow humps out there. You just got to be careful. Last week I'll tell you what I did Sunday. I was running a private boat, and we caught lane snapper. I forget how many we caught. We had the limit, but I'm afraid to say now. But we had the limit.
Grits and grunts.
And lane.
Statute of limitations is done.
No, not for a captain. We caught lane snapper. They have to be 8 inches, but we caught them bigger than that. And the lady with me, the guy's daughter, she lived in Paris and she was a chef, and she said, do you have to fillet those fish or can you leave them whole? I said, yeah, I can leave them whole. So what I did, I scaled those lane snapper and went in right at his rectum and split him all the way up through his bottom jaw and took the gills out and all the entracles. And she fried those things whole. They were delicious, man. She said, next time we go, that's what we're fishing for.
Oh.
I thought to myself, oh man. You know, but you know, there's a lot of great eating fish out
It's
there.
the same. You mentioned grunt earlier. You can do the same with grunt.
Well, you can do the same with grunt. The grunt, I really like to fillet them.
Yeah.
You know, if they're decent size.
The meat's a little firmer.
Yeah, meat's a little firmer.
How were you
Yeah.
fishing for the lanes?
The lines, we were fishing in 70 feet of water. We were fishing with squid. On the bottom with 6 ounces of weight.
Like a chicken rig with 3 hooks on it?
Yeah. Well, I just had one. That was all I could keep up with.
Yeah, they like structure though. There's something down there.
Yeah. I'll tell you where we were. We were out of Fort Pierce, and we were right on the, what's the name of that reef, that close-in reef out there? Oh, shoot. Okalana Reef is way on out there. But it's Okalana. But it's the one back this side of there. And we had a nice bunch of fish. They were small. But, I mean, you know, some of them were like maybe that. You know, some of them they were all legal fish. But but they really did well. And I was kind of surprised at that because, you know, we all think about mackerel and wahoo and snook and dolphin and all that stuff. There's a lot of good catching, a lot of good eating fish out there. Me and Jerry were talking the other day. He said, "You ever eat any of these hardtails?" I said, "No, but I know a lot of people that do eat them, and I'm sure they're just as good as any other fish."
What's a hardtail?
Blue runner.
Blue runner.
Blue runner.
Blue runner?
Yeah.
There's one of them that you got going through there.
Yeah, we were getting them by the inlet there. With,
Wendy's Reef?
sorry?
Wendy's Reef?
Wendy's Reef.
Wendy's Reef.
That's
No, it starts with a B. Yeah.
Bob Hurst?
so.
What? Bob Hurst?
Bob Hurst Senior Reef?
That's a straw. That's a.
That's a wreck or something.
One of the.
I'm sorry,
We're going to finish up in a few minutes. But one thing we didn't really talk too much about was the bluefish as well. You see them a lot. They run down the beaches most likely. You know, most of the time they're running the beaches. One of the things that we used to, you know, I used to, when the mullet come through in the fall, I would always net some extra mullet and freeze them. And then when I'd go out, you know, because I have 2 boys and we'd always have more than one rod out, take a finger mullet or, you know, slightly bigger and maybe cut it in half. And the bluefish love cut mullet.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, you know, and if there's sharks out there, you can get a shark. I mean, it's about fishing and catching fish, especially with kids. But
That's the shark man right there.
Always have, you know, I'd always have some cut mullet with me, and you get a nice bluefish or two, and you know they're good to eat too. You can eat them fresh.
Yeah. Bluefish are good fresh.
You think they'll actually do like pilchards too? Because I was hitting
They'll
some
eat-
pilchards a while back and I got some frozen ones.
I'd cut them in half.
And they're like that big.
Yeah. Cut the tail off, you know, cut them in half if they're bigger. But if they're small, just cut the tail so there's a little smell to them, and yeah, you'll get them.
You get you some bluefish, smoke them, make fish dip out of them. They make the best fish dip.
That's what my father-in-law's for. He's got the smoker.
All right, we're going to finish up
All
on
right.
Facebook, Sam, and just to say, you know, thanks if you're out there watching us. I didn't see any questions come in tonight, but we had some here at the store. Don't forget to come by and see us in Jensen Beach. And like I said, we've got some new boats in, and Parker, Everglades, Regal, and pontoon boats, Barletta. Awesome tri-tunes. Sam, you got anyone?
We've had a great year with
Yep.
y'all. I really appreciate everyone coming by. I really appreciate everyone listening to us. Hopefully, we'll be right back in January. And we've had a good time. And if there's any questions, y'all call them in or write them in.
Yep.
And Haley will save them. And